pivoting, just kind of like taking what your offering was prior to COVID and just moving it a little bit left or a little bit right to suit the current conditions, whether that means going remote, whether that means digitizing your product. Guys, what are some of the best pivots you guys have seen out there? Calvin, do you have something for us?
Yes, absolutely. No, thanks. I think, speaking about the digital age, having technology in place and using that to pivot is your first step. One of our new clients on board. Very exciting to work with them in the coming weeks. They're a traditional functional gym, that people attend and on the ground, and they've managed to recently launch an online platform where they sell in 10-week training courses basically to the public. And I think it's an incredible pivot, just from the traditional gym to an online platform via an app. They've actually got potential investors on the table from New York, so it's very exciting at the moment. And they've run this through an influencer marketing strategy. So it's been through influencer marketing, which you don't really see out there being very successful, but it's really worked for them. So that's been great to see. That's one of our newest clients. And then maybe a long-standing client in the agency activation space has also had to look to go digital. So they're trying to build a digital online marketing strategy for their clients.
Definitely. So I think it's, figuring out what have you got in your hand, what is the expertise that you have, what capacity does your team have, and how can you utilize technology and change and figure out something that'll work under the current circumstances. I love the example of the gym. It's such a concrete one because gyms are absolutely closed. There's no two ways about it. You cannot trade, and most of your members are probably not going to be paying if they can't actually access your facility, which is your product offering, right? But then figure out a way how to move that online, and then sometimes even these kinds of pivots then push a company to a point where the innovation that comes out would maybe never otherwise have existed in the ecosystem, and now they've got a product out in the market that they've got significant investors interested in, which could steer the company in a whole different direction to become a tech business and an online training company instead of just a physical gym where the scale of that is limited to some extent. So I love that. Lizanne, do you have an example for us of someone who's pivoted really well?
I have a client who's actually a charity. They usually provide literacy support to schools. And obviously during this time, the schools are closed, so they don't have any access to the schools. And they immediately ask themselves, well, what is the need now? So they started to move into food delivery in poverty-stricken areas. And they actually delivered 100 tons of maize last week. So that's amazing, just how quickly they changed and be able to do that. And all their staff that are usually going out to schools and assisting the various facilitators are now basically having their own little call centers from home, organizing deliveries, etc. So yeah, that's a thing that was quite inspiring to hear about.
Definitely, yeah, I love it. I think we work with the guys at Ideas Cartel, which are it's a members club with a physical entrepreneurs co-working space with a really nice restaurant and things like that. So obviously all of that's also it's locked down and closed up. But the guys have re-engineered the kitchen to be able to do deliveries of fresh produce, and they've actually created a significant revenue line item from this as well as online webinars, which is such a massive pivot from what their core business used to be. But entrepreneurs are finding kind of creative ways to still make it work, to use their resources and their staff and their knowledge and their networks to, get something to market that still generates revenue, right? I think that's one of the big things. But with a lot of people doing that, a lot of people are trying now to push their product or their service online. Everyone's fighting for a very similar kind of market share in each one of the industries now. How important do you guys think it is to stand out? Like, how important is that value proposition that makes you stand out from the crowd? Calvin?
Yeah, I think more important than ever, during a crisis. As I think Winston Churchill even said, never waste a good crisis. it's a really great time to take a step back, look at the current value proposition that you have in place for your clients, and reassess that. Understand the value that they are receiving now, whether it's still relevant, and having to adjust, continuously and adapt continuously to prove to them that the value that they're receiving is up to standard, or even better than what they've received in the past. So I think founders and management are really having to rethink value propositions, access to market strategies. They're really forced to adapt business models and service offerings to this new economic landscape and business environment we find ourselves in.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think a crisp, clear value proposition is definitely one of the core things to make sure that you firstly survive the current circumstances, but also over time start to thrive, right? Maybe let's talk to those 2 points. If we're talking, survival, like what are the best strategies for survival? If that is what you need to do now as a business, how do you survive the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months? Johan, would you start us off?
Sure. I think the important bit here is to understand that hope is not a strategy. And I know as entrepreneurs, we're ever so hopeful and optimistic about how things will turn out. But Darwin is famously misquoted in saying that the fittest will survive, but it's actually the most adaptable that will survive, is what he said. And I think during this time, this rings so true. I think companies have to take the time, and you're on lockdown, you have the time, to consider the plans, to what is the core value proposition of a company, and then to say, okay, let's simplify the processes around that. Maybe something just like moving to the cloud will already make a massive difference, in terms of some of your core processes that's running. But I think to think that it will be business as usual is unfortunately going to be the wrong strategy. It won't be business as usual. How the economic landscape will operate, will be completely different from what you've grown used to, and maybe from what they've grown used to developing a business in. So I think considering all these things, considering the negative growth outlook, as Calvin said, never waste a good crisis. They have to spend the time and consider what's the value that they will provide in this time, and then work from there.
I love that. Survival strategies, guys. Anyone else with something that's important to take home from this?
If I can jump in here, maybe also think of work on what you can control. I mean, there's a lot of things going out, a lot of news happening, and you start stressing about all the things that you can't control. The best thing is work on the things that you can control and move from there. I think that's the best thing.
Definitely. No, I like that. And then I think we've spoken about some of the things that are necessary just to make it through the next while. So, sometimes cost cutting has been a big part of that. Guys have also mentioned a lot of different good points. But if we're looking past just making it through, like how do we thrive as businesses? How can entrepreneurs thrive in the new normal and in the future business world that will evolve from this crisis? Lazan, maybe I'll start with you.
I think to go back to basics, which for me is all about human connection and relationships. I've seen over the last few weeks that some of the entrepreneurs that I work with managed to renegotiate, come to new terms, get their suppliers or debtors or clients or stakeholders do things that I didn't think was possible. And it was simply based on the excellent relationships that they had with them. So I think with the new opportunities and with the new avenues that companies are trying, with all of those also come new stakeholders and new relationships. So it's about keeping those existing relationships very strong and really build very strong new, existing relationships and new ones.
Definitely. Anyone else got a thought on thriving in this environment and beyond?
I think I'll just add to it, and I think to be able to thrive is and latching onto my previous conversation about adaptabilities. If you can start on that leaner and essentially a more agile structure, it will actually allow you to really be able to pivot up and take hold of the opportunities when it actually arise. So, yeah.
Hey, Lau here, one of the founders of Outsourced CFO. If you enjoyed this video, make it official. Click subscribe.